Move on now. Nader Hashemi is Associate Professor of Middle Eastern Politics at Georgetown University and joins us now from Washington, D.C. As we were hearing there, Israel cancelling school trips, closing schools. They say they have planes airborne. Where you are in the United States, Joe Biden has returned from a weekend trip for consultations on the Middle East. From where you stand then, what would you say is the most likely scenario in terms of Iran's retaliation here?
My reading is I don't see the regime in Iran interested in escalating this into a broader regional war. I don't think Iran has the stamina or the appetite or the ability to take on Israel in a broader regional war. What they do want to do is send a clear message that it has the capabilities to respond to provocative attacks like the one that happened on April the 1st that killed several senior Iranian generals and officers. And so I would be surprised if Iran actually tries to hit targets within Israel, because that would produce the type of escalation that I think Iran is trying to avoid. The big question is, what targets are they going to hit in order to send that message to Israel and its allies in the West that it has deterrence capacity? That remains to be seen.
Many analysts have been saying that an important part of this for Iran is to make sure that on a domestic level, it continues to appear strong, that people inside Iran feel like their government is strong. What is the public sentiment in Iran at this point around everything that's going on?
I would somewhat disagree with the way you set up the question, because I think when we're talking about internal Iranian politics, I think most Iranians are deeply frustrated and angry over the repressive regime that rules over them. They sort of see Iran's conflict with Israel as Iran overextending itself, investing its resources in other parts of the Middle East, while the Iranian people are suffering economic destitution, sanctions, repression, etc. So I think that's largely young people, which are the majority segment of the population in Iran, most educated and members of the intellectual class. I mean, the regime does have a base of support, about 20% perhaps at most, and I think they're interested in the Islamic Republic demonstrating some power and strength. But for most Iranians, I think they're very disillusioned over what's happening right now. And most of them are simply trying to survive in a desperate economic situation, and also in the context of a very repressive regime that rules over them.
Meanwhile, in the US, the White House is continuing to say that its support for Israel is ironclad. And we've had Joe Biden come back from this weekend trip. What do you think that shows?
Well, I think Joe Biden really is at the source of this problem. His inability to rein Israel in, to sort of send clear messages to Israel that not only is its policy in Gaza unacceptable, something that Joe Biden has refused to do. I mean, he's sort of toughened the rhetoric a little bit in recent weeks, but there's been no policy shift. But regionally speaking, I think Benjamin Netanyahu can continue in this completely reckless way of trying to expand a regional war by engaging in these types of provocative actions against Iran, is largely a function of the fact that Joe Biden, allows him to get away with it. There's been no, for example, rebuke from the United States that attacking an embassy compound is a violation of international law. It's deliberately provocative. And so in many ways, this situation that we're seeing right now, the possible breakout of a regional war, can largely be traced back to Joe Biden himself, his very pro-Israel commitment, which is, of course, is drastically, affecting the people in Gaza. But now it's spreading to the rest of the region. And unless and until, Biden and Blinken shift policy, I think that Benjamin Netanyahu is going to drag this region to war, and then the cost will be much higher than what we've seen over the last 6 months.
Absolutely interesting stuff. Nader Hashemi from Washington, D.C. Thank you for joining us.